I did that for a few months, and finally my dad said, I can't take this anymore, so he bought me a $300 old Chevy pickup truck, which would not be, you would not be allowed to drive that on the road these days. You wouldn't have passed the safety. So I was going to farmers markets and starting to sell things when summer arrived. So I moved here in June, and by summertime everything got bigger. You know, peppers now, tomatoes. Things wouldn't fit on my saddlebags anymore on the bicycle. And I was going and delivering them. And then when I went to the farmers markets, I couldn't sell organic tomatoes for $5 a bushel. And so next to me had a bushel of non-organic tomatoes for $5. So it's $5, $5. People would still choose the non-organic ones. Now people pay double the price, right? Usually tomatoes, organic ones, most things organic are usually close to double the price, or they're more. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't. I did it because I kept trying to, and then I realized this isn't working. So I realized I can't sell organic until I go out there and start educating people. And that's how this place became an educational center in 1985, probably. I think 85, 86 is when the shift started happening and becoming more of an educational. Education was already happening.
Yes.
There was already herb walks happening. People were coming for a little bit of gardening classes here and there, but they were minor. But in 85, 86, 2 or 3 years after I was here, the focus became that. Because, actually, there's one more step. After I had finished doing the farmers markets, I decided to do garlic. I thought organic garlic, there's a great need for it. It doesn't matter what part of the world you come from, what your tradition is, what your culture is, be it from Europe, from Asia, whatever. Everyone likes garlic, be it as a food or as a spice or as a medicine. You know, people who are health conscious or herbalists, garlic is good. And it's one of the easiest crops to grow organically. Mm-hmm. So I grew between 1 to 2 acres of organic garlic. And I was the largest organic garlic grower in all of Ontario. And the garlic went from here all the way to Montreal, to Quebec, to Toronto, all across. And that was another short-term occupation I did for about 2 or 3 years. And I realized that monoculture wasn't my cup of tea. It just didn't work. So that's when I became more of diversity. And that's when it started becoming much more educational. So, yeah, about 3 to 4 years that went by after I moved here, trying to figure out what is my purpose, what is my passion, what do I love to do, and realized that I just love to be able to show people and to share with them and demonstrate and teach how another way of doing it. So it went from being organic, one of the first organic growers in all of Ontario, to now seeing the next shift. And one of the main things I tell people when people arrive here, like, what do you guys grow here? I always tell them one thing: we grow soil. And if we can grow soil, then we can grow anything. And we keep increasing our topsoil every year. Our topsoil is getting richer and richer on this property where we're growing things. So to me, forest gardening, permaculture, which overlap, to me is the next wave that's coming in. The way the wave of organic came in 20, 25, 30 years ago, I believe this is the wave that's going to come in. Partly it's going to be, I feel, a necessity, because I think farming will just become very expensive as oil prices get very expensive, and people start demanding more and more local food, diversity of food, and not something that's coming from thousands of miles away. So that's one of the things I'm exploring: is what is raw food for the north? What is permaculture for the north? What is forest gardening for the north? For this region, what do we need for here? And that's where I see that fits in.
Beautiful. Now, you mentioned raw food. You live the living food lifestyle, the raw food lifestyle. Can you talk a little bit about that, how that works for you in Canada? Because of the growing season, this is why I asked the question.
Yeah. A lot of times people think that raw food is cold food, and that's something I've been trying to teach before I even came here. I used to work at Hippocrates Health Institute back in the early 80s, back when Dr. Ann Weedmore was alive and Victoris was doing his bit from Boston teaching. And so when I moved here, that's the way I started, as a raw food center and sharing that. And so I've been exploring this for about 30 years. And for some reason, still people after 30 years, people still think that raw food is cold, and we tell them that doesn't have to be cold. You can definitely warm it up, warm it up to room temperature, warm it up to belly temperature is the temperature that ideally we should measure it at, body temperature. So there's many different things we can do to make it work for someone. So our approach that we do is something called Ayurvedic, live food nutrition. How to customize it, how to make it work for this individual, for this specific who the person's constitution is, what their genetic blueprint is. And the Ayurvedic model, I feel, is a system that can make it much more successful for people who are trying raw food. People who are doing raw food, I think they do well in the beginning, and then there might be a plateau of now, once the toxins, once the old is left the body and you start creating the new body, you got to learn how to find, do I want a blueberry or do I want an apple? Or do I want a blueberry or a raspberry? Which of these? And we all have intuition, and intuition can be wonderful and can guide us. The only thing is we've all been conditioned by our upbringing, friends, obviously TV, advertising, tradition, scientific confusion that goes on out there. So people have pretty much, I always tell you, either follow a person, you follow a philosophy, or you follow a scientific understanding. But the other way is how to trust your own intuition. But most people have lost that ever since they were so young. And to me, Ayurveda helps us to understand ourselves, to get us from point A to point B. Once your body gets healthier and healthier and healthier, and a lot of the old memories, a lot of the old cells die, and the new cells are born in the body, and we create new memories, new aspects of who we are, and that kicks in. Our intuition starts to come into action. So Ayurveda helps us to get to that place of intuition. But to go from wherever your diet is at to bring it into raw is a bit of a journey to get there. So to me, Ayurveda has many pieces to make it work for us better, especially for those who live in the north. Because we don't have solar energy for 6 months of the year. It's cold, there's winter, there's darkness. And Ayurveda teaches us how we can actually get more solar energy into our body, how to take in solar foods, how to bring in, like a sprout, for example, has solar energy, but once it gets activated, it's the enzymes that start to create that heat. There's different spices that can help warm our bodies up. There's different colors that can come in and support that. And that solar energy doesn't come just from food, it also comes on what kind of practices you do, what kind of breath work, what kind of exercise, what kind of other things you're doing to create that fire. And that's one of the things that I believe is lacking a lot for many people who are in the north. And if they don't address that solar aspect, there could be a challenge that occurs for them as they are exploring raw food. Like I said, it might be good for the first 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, and then there's a certain plateau unless your intuition is really, really kicked in and it's really clear intuition.
So in order to practice Ayurvedic medicine, it's not just reading, a book and going, oh, I'm Pitta, so I better. There's a lot to it. It's a science, and you would say you would need to see a practitioner to understand it. Is that your thoughts on it? It's
helpful if someone else who's objective, who can look at you. Yes, there's numerous books out there, numerous questionnaires out there. One thing just to be clear of anyone who's exploring Ayurveda is that there's 2 parts. One's called Prakriti. What is your genetic blueprint that you came into the world with? What is your genetic constitution? What kind of seed you are when you were born? The other one is where are you today? So you're comparing you to you. And a lot of the earlier Ayurvedic books only have one questionnaire to find out if you're Vata, Pitta, or Kapha. But that's only one part of it. If you're Vata, Pitta, Kapha, are you talking about Vata, Pitta, Kapha, what you're born with, or where you are now?
Right.
So you got to have the baseline, and then you got to have where you are now to find out: am I am I in alignment? And if not, how do you correct this part to come to that place of being balanced?
Amazing.
So it's simple in many ways. You can learn Ayurveda in a weekend, pretty simply, and you can understand it, apply it in the kitchen, all the rest. But if you keep deepening it deeper and deeper, because Ayurveda means the science of life, and it is a science, but it's also an art, the art of life. And what is Ayurveda? How do those principles apply to us here in the north compared to where Ayurveda originates from, which is in India? And the principles all apply because the science of life is on this whole planet. And what it really means is, when I say constitution, it means who are you? Know thyself. And if you don't know who you are, if you don't know what kind of seed you are you an apple seed or are you a pear seed? The apple seed needs this kind of conditions, this kind of soil, this kind of water, this kind of conditions. A pear tree needs this. So it needs different conditions. And if you know what conditions you need, you provide that for yourself. Not just with the diet. Diet's one part of it, very important part. But there's all these other parts that will either balance you or throw you out of balance.
So, transformation. Is there a set formula? Now you're speaking about know yourself. Is there a set formula if you do these things? If you eat raw food, you know your constitution, you meditate, you will transform into a light being. Is there a path that someone could follow? Or is it basically you need to go out and tune into yourself, figure it out yourself?
I don't think there's a formula. I think it's, I call it allurement, trusting what you're being called to, what you're interested in, where your curiosity is, what your gifts are to give to the world. And that comes more from the heart, not from the mind. It's trusting that part. It's rediscovering that part. Just like I was talking about earlier, what happens is for a lot of people, they've lost that because they've thought, well, you can't be a musician, you better be an accountant, because accountant, you can depend on the money. Musician, you might not make money, so a lot of times the arts are put down here. And yet, I think we all want to be creative. We're creative beings. We want to create whatever that is, be it a beautiful garden, be it a beautiful piece of art, music, song, whatever that is. But a lot of times the arts are way down here. So a lot of times we're taught by our teachers or by society, by our parents, to go with this, with the mind, and go there. And I think that gets us into trouble compared to following. And that's why people might make a lot of financial income, but they're not happy. Or they're not healthy because they haven't been following what their true desire was of how they want to express themselves. And that's one of the things that Ayurveda teaches. Is everything you take in creates an impression. Everything you tasted create an impression. Every song you heard create an impact. If I smell a rose and go, wow, or taste a fig, saying that fig is so good. If that fig stays with you, that memory of it stays with you for the rest of your life, that's left an imprint. And gradually all those imprints make up who you are now. Now they're either healthy imprints or unhealthy imprints. And eventually imprints will become expressions. Expression. How do you express it? Now, positive one is you express it through your creativity. The negative one is expresses through an illness. Because they were negative imprints, which meant that eventually there's a disorder or a disease that occurs now. Because you heard the wrong things, you ate the wrong things, you hung out with the wrong people, whatever that was. All these things kept coming in, and all those memories, were they positive or negative. So to me, that would be how I would answer that question, is if you follow the allurement, the true allurement, not one that goes to cravings or addictions and gets you, into that addictive pattern, but the healthy ones.
And can you, with children, can you consciously imprint them